Hey, this is from Alex Jones. The economic fallout on this, as I suspected, is much worse than anybody is talking about. I think these guys are getting close.
Anything like the pre-pandemic economy. We may be seeing food shortages. We may see oil collapse. We may see the central banks take over large shares of the U.S. economy, take over large shares of the world economy. We may see inflation.
Okay, so you're taking world banks taking over large shares of the economy. This is what I've worried about for over 50 years. They finally got this key factor in play, shut down the world, and you're going to see these big corporations, corporate corporations, banking corporations take over large parts of the economy worldwide. This is what I feared. This is the number one fear that I've been concerned about for a long time, and it looks like the markers are in place to do that.
We may see deflation. We may see stagflation. We may see a mixture of all three. Tonight, we'll be discussing that later on with George Gammon, who has been prescient in his predictions, both with his guests and with himself over the last month and a half. We'll be discussing that and more. Just to give you some of the economic headlines. Coronavirus outbreak. It's not the outbreak that's causing the problems. It's, in fact, the shutdown primarily and principally that's causing the problems. That plus the supply chain issues.
Supply chain issues plus the shutdown.
Is squeezing Pennsylvania's food supply chain. Indeed, the president was having to issue orders, emergency orders, to take over parts of the food supply chain for the first time in American history, just to make sure we can have meat in the coming weeks. In the same context, articles talking about what comes next for the stock market and the equities market depends on one key uncertainty, and that's whether or not these shutdowns will be lifted and how soon they will be lifted and the scope and scale to which they will be lifted. Today, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama mostly lifted their shutdowns, but not entirely. California doubled down. Maine doubled down. Michigan is attempting to double down. Illinois is attempting to double down. Large parts of the U.S. economy still suppressing all economic activity and civil liberties. Indeed, other problems include money velocity. That's the speed with which money goes in around the economy. That dictates whether you get deflation or inflation or stable pricing. Well, in that context, an article reads, Americans are hoarding cash. Savings rate hits the highest level since 1981. In other words, the money people are getting, because they are nervous about the future of the economy, they're hoarding rather than spending. That hoarding habit was a key function in the Depression extending over a decade when it happened in 1929. Another article in Poverty and Social Policy Brief about how forecasting estimates of poverty during the COVID-19 crisis. And what it goes through, it says employment rates are projected, in fact, to rise to 30%. The annual poverty rate may go up to 20%, which would be the highest level of poverty since 1967. Even if employment recovers, they project an annual poverty rate that will be higher than any time in the modern era. They suggest that, in fact, there's also the pre-tax, pre-transfer poverty rate will reach a record high, they estimate, this year. Working age adults and children will face particularly large increases in poverty. And with poverty globally comes starvation. Estimates are that up to 130 million people, more than normal, will be on the edge of starvation this year because of the global economic shutdown. In the same context, it was written today in Real Clear Markets.
So scary figures. Let's get into this. Get in here. Now, what this guy is saying is important. Listen up. Taxes are going to really rise, and it's going to kill a lot of small businesses.
Or Uber, something like that. Well, why are they buying that? Well, let's be honest, because it makes them look good. It's kind of it's the political thing to do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a good investment for the people that they owe the money to. But they also lever up. I want to make sure people are clear there. So they'll not only go into the corporate bond market, which in and of itself is more risky than a treasury. They'll do it at let's say 50% leverage. So if they're getting that 3.5% return, well, then they say, well, we got to have 7. So they take out a bunch of leverage and go into the market. And so you just compound the risk. And it gets to a situation where they're already way underfunded. And the more problems they have, the more risk they'll take. Well, the more risk they take, if we get a down market or a recession, the more in the hole they're going to be. Then the only release.
Now, it's not just this. It's people like me that are struggling in debt. Debt itself is going to compound all the problems. Uh, World debt, individual debt, corporate debt, government debt. Debt in and of itself is going to compound this economic collapse worldwide. It's going to compound it. And it's going to create something greater than the Great Depression and longer than the Great Depression. I don't think we'll ever get out of it. I don't think we'll ever get out of it. And so people are going to be screaming for help from the government. Now, on the positive side of this, and no one is talking about this, it's going to force people to work together and choose which way to go. Are you going to go towards the government and get taxes and help from the government? Or are you going to go to private groups, United Order, like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? It's going to force the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to get into the United Order. And we need to talk about that, and we will in time, as I see it really come to pass. But I think I'll live long enough in the next 5 to 7 years that we'll see this United Order push forward and put a lot of pressure on the church to get into independent production, farming, corporations, and so forth, and use the individual unity of work in a corporate level and faith. That you're going to see this happen, and no one's talking about this. No one. Mark my words, it's going to push the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints into getting into the United Order. So basically, long term, before Christ comes, and it may be 15, 20 years before he comes, we're not going to get through this government control, this world depression. We're not going to. And you're going to see people work either with the United Order, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or you're going to see them work with governments. And most people are going to go towards governments and working with the governments because they trust them. And you're going to see a few people come towards the church and work with that because they don't trust governments. So that's going to be the Great Division. The Great Division. Again, this is Roger Martin from Billings, Montana. So think about what's going on. Good day. So that's where I'm at. Again, we're only seeing part of the picture, but I think we're going to see a worldwide economic change and control with this.
Valve for them to fill that gap in their pension is to come after the taxpayer. Again, they've got to, it's got to come from somewhere. So that's kind of the last resort, and that's where you see it play out in increasing property taxes. But I think they'll increase sales tax, property taxes, you name it, and it's going up. I mean, if you're someone that is a producer, you have a mid-sized business, you're an entrepreneur in a state like New York, New Jersey, Illinois, I mean, they're going to be coming after you. I can promise you, I would get out of there as fast as I could.
Exactly. No doubt.
All right, so he named 3 states, and that doesn't include California. They joke about this, but it is not funny. Where you fight your final battles for the second coming and who you work with is going to be key. How long is it going to take for the church to get into the United Order fully? I don't know. I think there'll be a transition period, probably several months to several years, to maybe a decade, because you've got to do this stuff carefully and by increments, because people need to learn to work together and they need to learn to work. And you're seeing this a slow process to work out. It's not quick like the church was first established. First, when the church was first established, people knew how to work, and it wasn't a problem as much. But it is a problem today because we don't know how to work together and work, period. Finish Roger Martin from Billings, Montana. You can take a look at this, but I think the food shortages, the oil collapse, or the socioeconomic challenges that we're going to get into with this are going to be something we've never seen before, even greater than the Great Depression. And I think this is worldwide. So you either start getting prepared now, because it may be too late in another 18 months or another year or two. All right, let's get after it. Let's get to work. Good day.